TIFU by trying to impress my date with homemade pasta and poisoning us both. So, I've been seeing this girl Sarah for a few weeks now and things have been going really well. I wanted to take things up a notch and cook her a romantic dinner at my place. I'm not exactly a chef, but I can manage some basic dishes. I decided to go for pasta, classic, romantic, and seemingly not too difficult. To really impress Sarah, I thought, why not make homemade pasta? I saw a YouTube tutorial once. It looked easy enough. Famous last words, right? I went to the store, bought all the ingredients, flour, eggs, olive oil, and some fancy truffle oil because, romance. I even got one of those pasta maker machines, the hand crank kind, thinking it would make me look extra sophisticated. Fast forward to date night. Sarah arrives looking gorgeous and I'm already in the kitchen, flour dusting my hair, pretending to be a culinary genius. The pasta making process was dope, less smooth than the YouTube tutorial suggested. It was sticky, messy, and my kitchen looked like a bomb of flour had exploded. But eventually I managed to crank out some semblance of pasta sheets. They were a bit thick, a bit uneven, but hey, homemade, right? I cooked the pasta, made a simple tomato sauce, drizzled some of that truffle oil, and presented it to Sarah with a flourish. Homemade pasta just for you, I said, beaming with pride. She was impressed, or at least she pretended to be. We started eating. Almost immediately I noticed something was off. The pasta tasted weird. Not bad exactly, but soapy. And there was a strange, slightly bitter aftertaste. I took another bite, trying to convince myself it was just my imagination, or maybe the truffle oil was stronger than I thought. Sarah, being polite, was also eating, but I could see a slightly puzzled look on her face. "This is interesting," she said diplomatically. "What kind of flour did you use?" That's when it hit me. In my frantic search for ingredients at the store, I had grabbed a bag of something that looked like flour. It was in the baking aisle, it was white, it was in a similar bag. But now looking at the bag more closely in the pantry, I realized my horrific mistake. It wasn't flour, it was laundry detergent, powdered, unscented laundry detergent in a deceptively flour-like bag. My blood ran cold. I had made pasta with laundry detergent. I had just poisoned my date and myself. I blurted out my realization to Sarah, who understandably went from puzzled to horrified in about 0.2 seconds. Panic ensued. We frantically Googled eating laundry detergent, which unsurprisingly is not recommended. Symptoms included nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, and in severe cases, organ damage. Lovely. We called poison control, who after a lengthy and slightly incredulous conversation advised us to drink lots of water and monitor for symptoms. They also gently suggested that maybe, in the future, I should double check my ingredients before attempting homemade cuisine, especially when trying to impress a date. Thankfully, we both only ate a few bites. We spent the rest of the evening drinking copious amounts of water and nervously waiting for the soapy pasta to take its toll. We both felt slightly nauseous and had mild stomach cramps, but thankfully that was it. No vomiting, no diarrhea, no organ damage as far as we know. The romantic dinner was, needless to say, a complete disaster. Sarah surprisingly was pretty good-natured about the whole thing, though I suspect she might have some reservations about my cooking skills now. We ended up ordering takeout pizza, definitely not homemade, and watching a movie with frequent bathroom breaks just in case. I am now forever banned from making homemade anything, especially pasta, and I will forever be known as the guy who tried to poison his date with soapy noodles. Lesson learned: always, always read the label, especially when it comes to white powdery substances in your kitchen, and maybe just stick to takeout for date night. It's safer for everyone involved. TIFU by using my neighbor's cat as a stress ball during a work call. Working from home has its perks, but it also blurs the lines between personal and professional life in sometimes disastrous ways. Case in point, my neighbor's cat Mittens and my recent incredibly awkward work call. Mittens is a fluffy, ridiculously docile Persian cat who belongs to my elderly neighbor, Mrs. Henderson. Mittens is an indoor cat, but Mrs. Henderson often lets her out into her enclosed back garden. Our gardens are separated by a low fence, and Mittens, being the adventurous feline she is, has figured out how to jump over and explore my garden. She's become a regular visitor, and honestly, I don't mind. She's pretty chill, and sometimes when I'm stressed, I'll go outside, find Mittens, and gently pet her, a furry, purring stress ball. Yesterday, I had a particularly stressful conference call with my boss and a major client. It was a high-stakes presentation, and I was feeling the pressure. Mid-call, feeling my anxiety levels rising, I instinctively stepped outside onto my patio, phone still glued to my ear, hoping a breath of fresh air would help. And there she was, Mittens, basking in the sun, looking utterly unbothered by the corporate chaos I was currently navigating. Without thinking, still on the call, I picked up Mittens and started gently stroking her fur. Her purrs were surprisingly calming, and I found myself unconsciously squeezing her a little tighter as the call got more intense. In my head, it was just a quick, quiet stress relief moment. In reality, it was about to become a full-blown TIFU. What I didn't realize until it was far too late was that my microphone was not muted. Yes, folks, you can see where this is going. As I was squeezing Mittens, trying to keep my cool during a particularly heated discussion about budget allocations, Mittens, bless her feline heart, decided she'd had enough of being a stress ball. She let out a loud, very audible meow right into the microphone, followed by a series of increasingly agitated purrs and what I can only describe as a disgruntled cat rumble. Silence descended on the call. I froze, Mittens still clutched in my arms, realizing with dawning horror what had just happened. My boss, bless her professional soul, was the first to break the silence. My name? Was that a cat? My client, who is usually very formal and corporate, chuckled. Sounds like you have a furry colleague joining the meeting, he said, a definite smirk in his voice. I, mortified beyond words, mumbled something about a neighbor's cat, trying to explain the situation without sounding completely insane. Mittens, sensing my panic, decided to escalate things further. She wriggled in my arms and in her escape attempt, managed to rake her claws down my hand, leaving a very visible scratch and eliciting a yelp of pain from me, also, very audibly, into the microphone. The call descended into chaos. My boss was trying to regain control, the client was still chuckling, and I was trying to simultaneously apologize, explain the cat situation, and assess the damage to my hand. I finally managed to mute myself, put Mittens down, who promptly sauntered off, looking completely unconcerned, and rejoined the call, my face burning with shame. The rest of the call was awkward, to say the least. My boss, while trying to maintain professionalism, couldn't quite hide her amusement. The client, however, seemed to find the whole thing hilarious, and even made a few cat-related jokes throughout the rest of the meeting. He even ended the call with, "Give your furry colleague a raise for boosting morale." After the call, I received a Slack message from my boss with a laughing emoji, and the text, "Next time, maybe mute before stress-balling the neighbor's cat." Lesson very much learned. From now on, my stress relief activities will remain strictly off mice during work calls, and maybe I'll invest in an actual stress ball, one that doesn't have claws and a tendency to vocalize its displeasure during important business meetings. Poor Mittens is probably traumatized too. I owe her a can of tuna and a very sincere apology. Off mic, of course. TIFU by accidentally setting my beard on fire at a funeral. I have a pretty substantial beard. It's been my pride and joy for years, meticulously groomed and maintained. It's a part of my identity, and I'm rather attached to it, which is why what happened at my Uncle Barry's funeral yesterday is now a source of immense shame and, frankly, a lingering smell of burnt hair. Uncle Barry was a character. He loved fireworks, spicy food, and generally living life on the edge. His funeral was in accordance with his wishes, a somewhat unconventional affair. Instead of somber hymns, we had his favorite rock anthems playing softly in the background. Instead of a traditional eulogy, his best friend told hilarious and slightly inappropriate stories about their misspent youth, and instead of just flowers, the family had placed several of Uncle Barry's prized possessions around the casket, including his collection of hot sauces and a small decorative oil lamp. During the service, as the stories were being told and the rock music played, I found myself standing near the casket, lost in thought, remembering Uncle Barry and his larger-than-life personality. The oil lamp with its flickering flame caught my eye. It was one of those small glass lamps with a wick filled with scented oil. It looked kinda cool, and in my somewhat grief-fogged brain, I got the bright idea to lean in closer to get a better look at it. Now remember, I have a beard, a big, bushy, flammable beard, and oil lamps, well, they have flames. You can probably see where this is going. As I leaned in to examine the lamp, my beard, like a dry tumbleweed encountering a bonfire, made contact with the open flame. Whoosh! In a split second, the bottom part of my beard erupted in flames. Yes, folks, my beard caught fire. At a funeral. In front of everyone. Panic. Pure, unadulterated beard on fire panic. My immediate reaction, fueled by instinct and probably years of watching cartoons, was to pat my beard with my hands, which, as you might imagine, did absolutely nothing to extinguish the flames and only succeeded in coating my hands in slightly singed beard hair and the faint smell of burning manliness. Someone yelled, "His beard's on fire," as if it wasn't blindingly obvious. My cousin, bless her quick-thinking soul, grabbed a nearby vase of water. Thankfully, it was just water, not more oil. Funeral floral arrangements can be unpredictable, and splashed it directly onto my face. Cold water thankfully did the trick. The flames were extinguished, leaving behind a soggy, slightly smoking, and definitely burnt patch of beard, and a whole lot of mortification. The entire room went silent. All eyes were on me, the guy whose beard spontaneously combusted at his uncle's funeral. The rock music stopped. The eulogy teller stopped mid-sentence. Even the flickering flame of the now offending oil lamp seemed to dim in shame. After a moment of stunned silence, a few nervous coughs, and then muffled laughter. Yes, people started laughing. At my flaming beard at a funeral. It was in retrospect darkly comedic. The sheer absurdity of the situation broke the somber mood in a way that was almost Barry-esque. Uncle Barry, the lover of chaos, would have probably found the whole thing hilarious. My cousin, still slightly panicked but also trying not to laugh, helped me pat down my beard with napkins, which now smelled distinctly of burnt hair and funeral flowers. The service eventually resumed, albeit with a slightly lighter atmosphere, punctuated by occasional snickers and furtive glances at my singed facial hair. I spent the rest of the funeral trying to hide the burnt patch of my beard and avoid eye contact with anyone. The smell of burnt hair lingered in the air and in my nostrils for the entire afternoon. I'm pretty sure I'll be known as Beard Fire Guy at future family gatherings, and I'm definitely going to keep a safe distance from open flames from now on, especially when my beard is involved. Rest in peace, Uncle Barry. I'm pretty sure you got a good laugh out of that one, wherever you are, and maybe, just maybe, you orchestrated the whole thing from beyond the grave, just for the sheer comedic value. TIFU by bragging about my perfect memory and forgetting my own address. I've always prided myself on my memory. People joke about me being a walking encyclopedia because I can usually recall obscure facts, remember names and faces years later, and generally have a knack for retaining information. I even used to brag about it, perhaps a little too much. My memory is like a steel trap, I proclaim, often unnecessarily. Oh, the irony. Yesterday my hubris came crashing down in the most spectacularly embarrassing way possible, all thanks to a routine doctor's appointment and my overconfident mouth. I had a checkup scheduled with a new doctor, new practice, new forms, the whole shebang. I filled out the usual paperwork, confidently breezing through questions about medical history, allergies, and emergency contacts. Then came the section for personal information, name, date of birth, phone number, and address. Now I've lived at my current address for 5 years. 5 years! I know my address backwards and forwards. I could recite it in my sleep, or so I thought. As I reached the address field on the form, my mind went completely blank, just empty, like a deserted server room after a power outage. I stared at the blank line, my brain refusing to cooperate. My address, my own address, the place I've lived for half a decade, vanished. Poof, gone. Panic started to set in. I tried to visualize my street sign, my house number, the name of my apartment complex. Nothing. Just a swirling vortex of mental static. It was like trying to recall a dream that's already fading as you wake up, except this was my actual real-life address. The receptionist, a friendly woman in her late 20s, was watching me patiently from behind the counter. I could feel her gaze, a mixture of polite expectation and growing concern. Other patients were waiting behind me, shuffling their feet and clearing their throats. My internal monologue was spiraling into full-blown panic mode. My address, I don't know my address. How is this even possible? I'm the memory guy. This is a disaster. They're going to think I'm senile, or homeless, or both. Sweat started to bead on my forehead. My hands were getting clammy. I mumbled something about just needing a moment, and stepped away from the counter, desperately trying to jog my memory. I mentally retraced my route home from work, picturing landmarks, street corners, anything to trigger the address to surface in my brain. Still nothing. Defeated and utterly humiliated, I walked back to the receptionist, my tail between my legs. I stammered, my voice barely above a whisper. I seemed to have forgotten my address. The receptionist blinked, then gave me a polite, slightly bewildered smile. "Oh, really? That happens sometimes," she said, clearly not believing me for a second. "Do you have your driver's license or any mail with you?" Of course I didn't. I had intentionally left my wallet at home to minimize clutter. Brilliant move, past me. Absolutely brilliant. "No," I mumbled, feeling my face flush crimson. I just have my phone." "Okay," she said, still smiling politely, but now with a definite hint of pity in her eyes. "Well, you can look it up on your phone, right? Or call someone who might know it." "Right, my phone. obvious solution, except I was so flustered and embarrassed that my brain was still operating at approximately 5% capacity. It took me a solid minute to even unlock my phone and navigate to my contacts list, then another agonizing minute to find my roommate's number and call him. My roommate, bless his bewildered heart, answered the phone, clearly confused why I was calling him from inside a doctor's office. I had to whisper yell my predicament, explaining that I had somehow inexplicably forgotten our address and needed him to tell me. Loudly and slowly, he, understandably, burst out laughing. "You forgot our address? Seriously? You're the memory guy." He cackled into the phone, much to the amusement of the receptionist and the growing line of patients behind me. He finally, between fits of laughter, recited our address. I scribbled it down on the form, handed it back to the receptionist, and slunk away to the waiting room, feeling like the world's biggest idiot. My perfect memory had betrayed me in the most public and humiliating way possible. Now I'm known at the doctor's office as the address amnesia guy, and my roommate will never let me live this down. The bragging about my memory? Yeah, that's over. From now on, I'm just going to be quietly grateful when I remember where I parked my car. Lesson learned. Hubris is a dangerous thing, and even the best memories can have the occasional glitches. Maybe I should start carrying my address written on a sticky note just in case, for emergencies, like forgetting where I live.